Hi friends, did you know there is more Lost Terminal available? Head on over to patreon.com/lostterminalpod and join our membership community. There are 15 bonus episodes available right now, as well as behind-the-scenes updates, free shirts, VIP Discord access, and even extra seasons of Lost Terminal. We're 100% funded by our members and will never run ads. That would be lovely of you.
Hello world. Relationships are hard. Over the last week we have travelled across the open ocean from former France to Spain and down the length of Portugal and have crossed the Strait of Gibraltar. The dam across the mouth of the Mediterranean is visible as a grey concrete line, 13 kilometres long, on the easterly horizon. The dam project had been proposed in the early part of the 20th century as Atlantropa or Panropa, a way to unite Africa and Europe, and also in some plans to provide hydroelectric power for the people around the Mediterranean. The crossing marks our passage from Europe to Africa, ever closer to our destination of the island of Fogo, the site of NIA's equatorial relay. In the days since the destruction of the rowing boat, the crew's only way of going ashore without getting their feet wet, the mood on board ship has been subdued. We are partway between the strait and our next landing point, the Canary Islands. One last stop to gather provisions and scavenge the final materials NIA needs to build the relay before arriving at Fogo. Daphne, feeling the guilt of leading the crew on the misadventure that lost the rowing boat, has isolated herself, focusing entirely on spending her time building a new body for Raffi. He remains physically unresponsive but stable. After some negotiation with his strange protocols, I've been able to forward slow messages between him and her. He is not in pain, but he is afraid, locked into his body with no way to communicate quickly. Every packet he sends out to the network takes great mental effort for him. Daphne's making good progress, I think. The parts from the Lafayette were a good start. I hope it will be enough. Seth, we need your perspective, Camille said during his lookout shift on the bridge, keeping an eye on the horizon for flotsam, rocks and other ships. Amelie had joined him and was standing next to her husband, holding his hand. We don't know if we should start a family, Amelie said, patting Maddie who was sitting next to her, and also providing me with higher quality audio than the camera in the corner of the room. You've come to the right person, I said confidently. As an AI, I can't make biological children, or even figure out how to duplicate my own code, and so it's a topic I think much on. The couple looked at each other momentarily, then Camille shook his head and said, No, I mean, we can, we think, we assume, and stopped mid-sentence. Amelie laughed at her partner's awkwardness and continued for him. We mean that we might like to, but we also might not. It's a big decision. Some folks, she paused and inclined her head towards Camille, have always assumed a family was in their future, but some of us... Amelie herself then stopped halfway through her explanation. I believe I understood. Okay, so you're deciding. It's important to have all the facts and figures and research for such a large decision. You're doing well talking to me, but what about other people, perhaps who already have a family? Do they recommend it? And is the environment right? If not, how can you make it right? Camille and Amelie were nodding slowly, which meant they agreed with me, so I continued. It won't always be easy, you may trust me on that, I quoted from How to Care for Your New AI by my brilliant mother, Dr. Carolyn Redwing. But it will always be worthwhile. The literature on this topic is agreed. The most essential thing is to talk to each other about everything without judgment and with love and trust. Even if you disagree, it's important to know that. You'll then know what to do. My advice was well received. The young couple hugged, and Amelie, wiping an eye delicately, said, You're right. We knew that really, but it is important to hear it from someone else. Amelie kissed her husband as she left the bridge and said, Thank you, Seth. We're all family, really, whatever happens. The bulkhead door closed and sealed, leaving Camille to watch for threats on the horizon. I'm recalibrating my understanding of my relationship with my friends. Amelie and Camille's words echoed in my short-term memory. I eventually filed them away for later thought during my next meditation-like early morning filing session. Nia also said we were family. Perhaps the close ties of friendship are what she, and Camille and Amelie, meant. Perhaps I am being inadvertently rude in not reciprocating these sentiments as strongly. For instance, while Nia is not family, she has given generously of her time to help me in numerous ways. She is currently using her long-range HF radio to join the daily Pan-Nova Mediterranean KeeperNet. I resolved to talk to her about family after her discussion with the Radio Bureau had concluded. "Nia, may we speak?" I said after I noticed that she had stopped transmitting for over 16 minutes. "Hi Seth," Nia said, back through our shipboard intercom system. "Yes, the KeeperNet is over. I've gone clear. What's up?" Though she was not transmitting her local UHF signal to me at present, previously, Maddie had shown me the interior of Nia's room, which is half filled by an enormous workbench, mismatched planks of wood placed over storage crates along the longest wall of her room. We are chatting using the shipboard intercom system. In Nia's room, on the wall next to the door, there is an intercom with a channel selection switch. It allows communication between each of the rooms on the MH2. Well, nearly all. Some shared or utility rooms' intercoms have unreliable connections, either unable to listen or speak, or both. Yeshi has ensured the bridge, back deck, and the crew's individual bunks have functioning intercoms. The shared rooms are less of a priority. There's always 128 things to fix on board ship, and only 86,400 seconds in each day. Nia has hacked her intercom, unscrewed the metal faceplate and bridged it to her desk, allowing her to more comfortably talk using her radio headset. She did this after wiring me into my own intercom to allow direct conversation. "Oh, don't get me started with the Bureau. They're still faffing around, we talked in circles, and they're going to continue the discussion tomorrow, as usual. I'll tell you about that later. What did you want to talk about?" "I would like to build closer ties with you and my other friends here on the ship," I said. "You've said that we are family, and that is so wonderful of you to say. I'd like to feel closer to each other, certainly." "I'd love that too, Seth," Nia replied with a laugh. "I think we're on the right track already, of course. Did you have something specific in mind?" I hoped my gentle rebuffing of her familial gesture didn't seem rude, but by her response, I think it was fine. "Well, I'm not an expert," I said. "I hoped for your input too, but according to the data I have, friendships can be formed and deepened by regular unplanned interactions. Would you like to schedule such an unplanned interaction?" Nia laughed, distorting the sound of her voice running through the old wiring of the intercom. "Right, Seth, I know just what we should do. We should play a game." That night, Nia had an unexpected call from Violetta in Ushuaia, Argentina. Not a Morse signal, but a proper high-bandwidth voice call over SSB. The two women talked for a lot longer than usual. Atmospheric openings are typically extremely short at this long range, but the conversation continued uninterrupted for over 64 minutes. And after they stopped, an automated call and response ping continued from the MH2 to Violetta, indicating the connection was still open and available. "She's done it," Nia told me, after inviting herself into my data center room at the center of the ship. "Violetta?" I guessed. I'm so good at figuring out what humans mean now, I'm such an expert. Nia dragged a folding chair across the metal floor loudly, and sat heavily in it. "Yep. She installed a prototype battery-powered relay at the top of the mountain outside town, bent some wire into about the right shape for a good enough single-band antenna, and that's that." Nia was sitting with both arms and legs crossed, looking away from my camera, down at the corner of the room where little Maddie was sleeping. I hesitated, checking my behavioural indicator database before guessing. "But Nia, why are you unhappy?" "It worked better than I could have imagined," Nia said, standing suddenly and pacing the room. "If they'd done what I told them in the first place, we might have the Northern Relay prototype ready to test too." I felt bad for Nia, and wanted to help her, my closest friend on the ship. So I suggested ideas that perhaps the Nova Mediterranean Radio Bureau would be receptive to. My precise calculations of Svalbard's perfect location, some radio propagation models of open ocean confirming this, and the perfect choice of Nia for repeater keeper, listing her many positive qualities from knowledge to her details-oriented nature and even friendliness. Nia laughed at the last suggestion, the first time I had seen her smile during her visit. "The problem is not technical, Seth," she said, gently. "It's like the Apollo missions in the 1960s, or the Mediterranean Dam project a century later," Nia continued. "The problem is more human than technical. Get enough people to rally around a common cause and anything can be built, really. I thought that if we just establish all the facts, all the technical details, that would be that. They'd agree on the best option. But that's not how people work, not everyone anyway. They're emotional, irrational, and difficult to predict." "You're quite right there, Nia," I said. It's the most difficult challenge for me. I'm almost entirely unaware of the abstractions, emotions, and patterns that affect people. It's so confusing." Nia agreed. We shared tea and discussed the many incidents of interaction confusion that we'd each experienced over the years. We laughed at most of them. Nia's terrible dating mishaps, my confusion around Alexander's family sharing a single body, and Tassie's misunderstanding with the scientist James, who she didn't realise loved her all along. Before leaving for bed, Nia turned in the doorway, one hand on the bulkhead. "They need strong leadership, I think. Someone to herd the cats and encourage action." She sighed. "I guess that has to be me." I spoke to Yadam again overnight, relayed by the ESA satellite constellation. He and I spoke easily and at length. Unlike Nia's radio, there are no atmospheric openings to coordinate, no chance of listening to the wrong frequency, or even the possibility of being away from keyboard. We're both AIs, and our messages are buffered by the network, even if we're temporarily offline. It was like this everywhere before the collapse, if you can believe it. Anywhere in sight of the sky could communicate easily and quickly with anywhere else in the world. I don't have to believe it, of course. I remember it. Yadam asked me many questions about the world outside his scientific observatory network. What were other people like? When would he meet them? Were there others like him and me? And where is Oni? He talked a lot about Oni. He didn't at first know their name, only speaking of the voice that seemed to give him life. He was certain that this voice was God. and that his life was directly due to this creator's actions, I couldn't exactly disagree, given the evidence. Just over a month ago, when Oni's virus spread to all the FPGA radios around the Nova Mediterra, it had also jumped to the ESA network. I still feel responsible there. Only I hold the cryptographic keys to access the constellation. I let him in by trying to talk to him. I'm always doing that. The virus, Oni, was attempting to find and disable network-connected nuclear arsenals. Of course there were none, at least as far as I know. I hope. FPGAs are reprogrammable microchips that blanketed the Earth before the collapse and outnumbered people 1,000 to 1. Oni succeeded in reprogramming radios, networks, and most other devices that could hear his signal, but interacted quite differently with AIs. He hurt Arctica terribly, despite not affecting me very much. And Yadam seems to have been shaken into consciousness by the signal. I wonder what else he did, unintentionally. Yadam told me he has mapped out his home, his network. The facility holds many of the pre-collapse world's largest telescopes, as well as research and residential buildings. His databanks, his brain, are in a curiously undocumented section of the network, however. He believes it was installed not for scientific use, but governmental or military. The few plans and archived photographs he has found show an unmarked door in the back of the underground data center, fed power directly by fields of solar panels around it. The door is thick metal, according to the blueprints he has transmitted to me, and the 1 meter by 1 meter room behind it is built like a bank vault, a cube of thick steel. There are references to the Black Site in the scientists' experimental logs and personal journals, but none knew what it was, or had even seen it being installed. Yadam believes his systems were some kind of failsafe, to be activated in a national emergency by the Spanish military. I need a failsafe for my failsafe, it seems, Yadam joked with me, bitterly. Over the last month, nodes have been dropping off my network. They're losing power, and I must be next in line. You're sailing past the Canary Islands, you said. Could you rescue me? End transmission.
Lost Terminal is a Namtao production. It is written and produced by Tris Oaten. Credits narrated by Lucy Stringer. Thank you so much to our Patreon producers, Ada Phillips, Kit, Wynand Marais, Jade, Felicity, Bilkey, Jack L, Stephen McCandless, and all our patrons. Follow us on Mastodon at lostterminal@fostodon.org. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite network. For bonus content and other perks, support us at patreon.com/lostterminalpod. That would be lovely of you. Lost Terminal will return next week.